Napoleon Bonaparte is regarded as one of history's greatest military leaders. If you were to go out on the street and ask people if they've heard of him, I'm fairly confident most will give a general description of the French military general and statesman. Aside from his several successful campaigns, he was also a political leader, and many of the current legal structures of nations that once defied him are actually based on the concepts of his civil code, also known as Code Napoléon, established in 1804. So it's fair to say he remains relevant and influential to this day. Now, Napoleon has been portrayed in many works of fiction, often represented in his green colonel uniform with a large bicorn and with one of his hands in his waistcoat. The way he is depicted varies greatly with the author's perception of this character. For example, we all know him as a symbol of military genius and political power. Sometimes he is envisioned as a heroic visionary, but on the other hand, he can also be depicted as a tyrant, a petty one even. I think this is important to mention, as we'll soon come to my thoughts on the trailer for Ridley's attempt at covering the French Emperor and what aspects of his life that he wants to highlight in this film. I also would like to share with you how I would cover Napoleon's story in a movie myself, but we'll get to that. Napoleon was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica. The year before he was born, France acquired Corsica from the city-state of Genoa, Italy. This is why Napoleon later adopted a French spelling of his last name. He attended school in France, where he learned the French language, and later he went on to graduate from the military academy in 1785. The French Revolution began 4 years later, in 1789. The causes of which were a combination of social, political, and economic factors. Now, this was a period of radical political and societal change in France. There was a struggle for political control, there was civil disorder which culminated in the storming of the Bastille on the 14th of July 1789, and this led to measures taken by the newly formed National Assembly, which included the abolition of feudalism in France. So consider that there was absolute chaos going on in France, with on top of that an economic depression caused by a rapidly growing population and a severe winter in the year prior, resulting in famine and widespread starvation across the countryside. Financially, the country wasn't doing great either, due to earlier conflicts such as the 7 Years' War and the American War of Independence. And if you thought that it couldn't get any worse, you had Austria, Britain, Prussia, and other powers in Europe seeking to restore the Ancien regime by force. So France was fighting on all fronts. In April 1792, the French monarchy was abolished with the proclamation of the French First Republic in September 1792. And in January 1793, Louis XVI was executed. This is the moment I think the movie starts, as one of the first shots of the trailer shows us, right after the short little teaser clips, they show us Marie Antoinette being brought up to the guillotine at the Place de la Révolution, having been convicted of high treason. We see Napoleon watching the execution amongst the crowds, though they are cheering, he is not. Whether they will show us the king's execution or not, I don't know, but I think it is fair to say that the story of this movie will start with the French Revolution, and I think it is a good and also interesting choice because it's one of history's iconic moments. We will be propelled as an audience to the late 18th century France and the civil unrest and chaos taking place. One of my personal worries is how Ridley is going to condense over 2 decades of history into one movie. I've heard and I've seen quite a few people being concerned in regards to Napoleon's age. He was 19 years old in 1789, so he was in his early 20s when the French Revolution took place. And well, Joaquin Phoenix isn't exactly 20 years old now, is he? If you put that aside, you really need a special kind of actor to portray Napoleon, and I do believe Joaquin Phoenix is someone that can pull it off. He gives me that vibe of being like a god among mortal men, a genius in terms of military and political strategy, being this one step ahead of everyone, calm, calculated, not at all introverted, as I saw quite a few comment underneath reaction videos, and I also don't know why you would go that route because we've yet to see the full film. So, despite his age working against him, I am actually truly excited to see his performance. Next we see a scene I'm pretty sure is the Trias Vendémiaire insurrection on October 5th, 1795. Pro-royalists within the capital aiming to overthrow the French Republic, and Napoleon, at this point 26 years old, already risen to the rank of Brigadier General of Artillery. He was actually in command of the defense of the French government that was known at the time as the Directory, against a force vastly outnumbering him. Napoleon, however, was waiting for the attack, and we see him here in this trailer unleashing hell in the form of grape shot onto the royalists. I'm also interested to see how they're going to handle his relationship with Josephine, his first wife, as he'll later marry Marie-Louise, daughter of Emperor Francis II of Austria. So we see here Josephine, played by the wonderful Vanessa Kirby, for the first time at a society ball hosted by Paul Marat, Napoleon's mentor and the de facto governor of France. Josephine was a 32-year-old mother of two when she met the 26-year-old Napoleon in 1795. So this took place, as he refers to the uniform he wears in the trailer, after the siege of Toulon in 1793. And it was this siege and battle where Napoleon first won fame and promotion when he managed to capture the fortifications overseeing the harbour, forcing the city to capitulate and the Anglo-Spanish fleet to withdraw. So I think, knowing it is a Ridley Scott movie, he's going to make these battles feel like they are immense, with more of a focus on the spectacle and grandeur of these moments, and less so of an attention on historical accuracy. I'm definitely in the camp of this movie is there to introduce people who aren't as much into history as the rest of us, to the character that is Napoleon, to the time period, and to the events that happened in an entertaining sort of way. I think there are definitely some scenes out there that are meant to create this striking imagery and to inspire people to look up and research the actual events. There are definitely some shots here in this trailer that visually look stunning and epic, but are questionable at best in regards to historical accuracy. For example, the Battle of the Pyramids in Egypt against the Mamluks. I doubt the cannonballs actually hit the pyramids itself, considering the Great Pyramid of Giza was roughly 15 kilometers away from the battlefield, though visible enough for Napoleon to name the battle after the pyramids. There are a few other scenes here that could raise an eye for true historians, but that's why I'm intrigued. And I also want to come back to the way that he's going to be depicted in this film, because a lot of these things can result by that decision made by the writers and by the director. What part of Napoleon's story does Ridley want to tell? It seems from the trailer that it's going to be a mix of some of his most famous battles and campaigns, as well as the love story between him and Josephine. So I wonder if Ridley is going to lean into the legend more, opposed to what actually happened, historically speaking. And so now I'm coming to my ideal movie for Napoleon, if you want to approach it this way, and that is with Napoleon as the narrator. So I would start with Napoleon writing his memoirs whilst he's on the island of St. Helena, after being exiled for the second time, and he's thinking of his past events, his achievements, and he's telling us the story from his point of view, going back in time to the highs and the lows, and every now and then we cut and we come back to him on the island, seeing him write, pause, maybe go out for a little walk, and have these moments as the connective tissue or main line of the story, trying to help us as some form of guide, if that makes kind of sense. So that's how I would do it if I were to tell his story, though I doubt I could make it work in a movie, even if it had a duration of over 2 hours. Keep in mind you're still talking about a little over 2 decades of history that you're covering, so I would create a series to carefully write and execute his story, and not just his story, but highlight all the things that were happening around him at the time. I don't know if this is how Ridley Scott is going to approach it, but I'm excited to find out how he's going to tell Napoleon's story. Just as a side note, to this day the movie Waterloo, released in 1970, is my favorite historical epic, depicting the 100 days period of Napoleon returning to Paris after his exile on Elba, the European powers declaring him an outlaw, setting the stage for the last conflict in the Napoleonic Wars, with Napoleon eventually being defeated at Waterloo, marking the end of his reign. But yeah, those were my opinions on the trailer. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you're into the Napoleonic Wars, then my channel covers games covering this specific time period. But next to that, I also got quite a few other gaming videos out there covering historical periods and more. Next to that, I'll also be setting up a podcast in the nearby future, talking about all kinds of movies with friends. So yeah, this video has been me kind of testing things out, getting warmed up, talking about other topics than just video games. But yeah, that having said, I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.